All right, we're doing some tests here to make sure everything is working. Let's see. Okay, it looks like it's working now. So, let's talk about the events that have been happening recently. So, we are witnessing now some troubled times. And it looks like Gab isn't working, and this is not good. Uh, so, what we're seeing is the shutting down of free speech and discourse on the internet. And they're doing it under the pretext of this attack, whether it was a false flag attack or whether it was really just a guy who snapped, we don't know. However, this is something we need to figure out because this could be the end of the last of the free internet enclaves that we enjoy as Americans. So it turns out that this guy followed me, and he also retweeted some of my stuff. He was a follower on Gab, the Gab account supposedly related to this guy who did this. Now, so I'm going to start looking at the comments here a little bit, but the point I'm making here is that we don't want violence. I've spoken out repeatedly against violence, and it's actually to the point where I've seen enough political arrests where I know if I fight back when I get attacked, that I will wind up in jail. Not the people that assault me. I've been assaulted in multiple states. I've filed multiple police reports, and every time the attackers get let off scot-free. And this can be frustrating. We are the politically oppressed, and I said in a video a few days ago that it would be into the hands of the Jewish oligarchs that control this country if someone were to give in to their rage and do some sort of unilateral action. And I ran for Senate. I didn't start a militia. I don't want people to watch me and see what I do when I put myself at risk and I put myself in danger and take away that there's anything other than me encouraging people to peacefully oppose the tyranny that we live under. The people in this synagogue probably had nothing to do with George Soros or the Federal Reserve or the broadcast news media. These were probably normal, everyday Jews. And when I talk about the Jewish conspiracy, most Jews are indoctrinated at childhood into this system of belief where they're always eternal victims and they always have to be looking out for the wicked goy. And this incident, if it isn't a false flag, is going to reinforce those beliefs and increase the solidarity for Jewish supremacism. And this attack will allow Jews to continue to portray themselves as the victim, as the whole. And it will make it harder to approach normies when we're talking about Jewish control of the media, Jewish control of our State Department, Jewish control of our wars that we've been forced into. It makes it hard to talk about Project for the New American Century or the Oded Yanan Plan. It makes it hard to talk about the fact that Jews are behind mass immigration because the moment you start criticizing Jews, they're going to associate you with this guy that went into the synagogue. And yeah, somebody just said in the chat victim card, and they're being handed one on a silver platter right now. When I first woke up, there was rage, and I understand if you're waking up, you're probably going to be angry. And the best thing you can do is not cave to that anger, because this isn't like some ancient tribal situation where there's an aggressor tribe and you can just go eye for an eye or seek revenge. If every goy in the world sought eye for an eye with the Jews, all the different tribes of man that the Jews have targeted for denigration and destruction, there wouldn't be a Jew with eyes left in the world. And so looking for pure vengeance or eye for an eye like the Jews have in their religion isn't going to solve anything. All it's going to do is get them entrenched in their positions of power, and at that point, anyone who is critical of Jewish supremacist control of this country, anyone who's critical of Jews openly trying to commit genocide against whites, and it's not all of them, but it is their elites, is going to be associated with this shooter. So this is really, this is a tough bridge we're at here. This is a fork in the road, because at this point we're about to lose Gab, which is where people who got banned from Twitter for even the most basic of criticism of Jews, or even criticism of programs implemented by Jews, they now don't have a place to congregate and discuss strategy for how to retake this country. Now, I'm seeing a lot of stuff in the chat about false flag attacks or people not buying the narrative being presented by the media. I don't know enough now. I haven't had time to look into this. But when he retweeted my post, the guy who did this Bauer guy, he retweeted something I said where I said that expect false flag attacks. Why would he retweet that and then go eliminate the need for a false flag attack by giving them exactly what they want, which is a victim card on a silver platter? Let's talk a little bit about the doors that are still left open to us. We know from my election that they will mess with the elections. 108,000 mostly Armenian voters were left off the pre-made ballot cards. Their ballot cards were defective. They had to write their names on their ballot card, meaning they were stripped of their right to anonymous ballot. And I was trying to peacefully compete for a dual citizen seat in the Senate, Dianne Feinstein. And now when there's election engineering where 108,000 people from a geographic and ethnic background area that are likely to vote for me are left off from the ballots, and they then have to forfeit their right to secret ballot and write their name on their ballot, as many congressional candidates and Senate candidates complained in California, there were voting irregularities. So even if I had gotten 51% of the vote as I had been hoping for, they would have taken that from me through these games. Now, I want you to look at Hofer in Austria. I'm going to pull it up here. So here, you guys probably can't speak German, but there was a man who was a nationalist in Austria, and he won the election. The night of the election in May of 2016, he went to bed thinking he had secured the existence of his people and a future for Austrian children in Austria. Everyone went to bed knowing that Hofer was winning by 1 or 2%. And suddenly everyone woke up in the morning and saw this. The deep state of Austria did not like the fact that Hofer, a nationalist candidate, had won the election, so they stuffed the ballot boxes, and in one region, 147% of the vote eligible for turnout turned out, meaning that they stuffed the ballot boxes 47% beyond the theoretical maximum. Meaning, they stripped Austrians of the right to engage in free and open and fair and balanced elections. And I'm going to kill my audio here. I think that is the echo here still making a problem here, because this is my first time using the green screen. How bad is the echo? Is the echo so bad that you can't understand what I'm saying? Damn. All right. So it looks like the audio is down for this. Damn it. I have a whole bunch of stuff lined up that I want to go over with you. Okay, so what I'm going to do is shut down OBS and try and just do a live stream without OBS. So I'll be back in just a moment. Finish. Turn off speakers. Yeah, the speakers are off. Here, let me try something here. Okay, so display capture. Alright, so let's Okay, how about now? How about now? Can you hear me now? Is the echo repaired here? So you can hear me. So what I'm saying here is that if you'll follow me, on the screen here, in Austria, a peaceful resolution to the problem, the carrying out of the will of the people through democratic elections, is not possible because the deep state interfered with the free and open election, and they stuffed the ballot boxes for postal ballots. The highlighted term here is 147% voter participation. Okay, so... Alright, so... I did turn off the sounds. I'm going to do a... I'm just going to do a live stream without the green screen. It was all fixed. Okay, so let's try this. How about now? Is the audio working now? Okay, how about now? Okay. Good, yes, it's working. Okay. So, if you can look at the screen with me here, let me... webcam. So look here. 147% voter participation. This is the reasons why people flip out. It's because things like the deep state, which is Jewish controlled, prevent people from having free and open elections. Right now, you can't criticize Jewish power on social media. And if this wasn't a false flag, if this guy really just cooked off and got angry, then this is really symptomatic of an overall problem that there's no longer a public square for people that are critical of the elites to speak in. And let's just assume that this guy wasn't a false flag attack, that he just got really angry and decided to do something unilaterally. What he has done is played right into the hands of the Jewish supremacists because now they get to play the eternal victim card. And it is a tragedy what happened. Even if I were to have full control of the government, I would not, I repeat, I would not do anything with capital punishment unless people had right to a trial. And that would only be some of the elites, for example, the Jews that were involved at the top with setting up 9/11, or people that helped cover up the USS Liberty attack, or the people that helped get the Jewish dual citizen, the Israeli Pollard off after the largest espionage case in history against this country in the 1980s. So I want you to understand me clearly. I am for expulsion because I don't want us to have a moral burden. When we do the right thing, we should feel good about it. And what this guy did... it is just going to be something that blocks us from being able to do the right thing. Jews have been expelled from many countries in the past, hundreds. And it was the right thing to do for the sake of the country's children. The top cited reason for expulsions of Jews is child abuse and child sacrifice. Now, when a guy goes into a synagogue and gives them the perfect photo op for victimhood, first off, he didn't go after the elites. He went after laymen in the community. And so this is going to be very bad for free speech on the internet. And I'm not one of those people that says don't criticize the Jews because they'll shut down the internet. I won't take it to that extreme. But what I will say is if you do violence as an individual against groups, all you do is strengthen that group's case, with the exception perhaps of white people. When violence gets done against us, the Jewish-controlled media does not show this. But I've been attacked in multiple states. I received blows to the head in Olympia, Washington. I had my property destroyed during an assault on me in Boca Raton, Florida. And in every case, the police filed charges, and the prosecutor, the state attorneys, and the district attorneys dropped the charges. If you're a member of RAM, League of the South, any of these organizations that are perfectly legal, you can face jail time just for showing up to an event if you get attacked and fight back. So this is political repression of the worst degree, and it can be tempting to get angry, but there's no such thing as vigilantism when you're trying to overthrow tyranny, which we try to do peacefully. And so there's already Antifa in Washington State that are tweeting about getting me. A man who I know has people that have infiltrated Antifa is telling me that I have been targeted. Now, they've already flyered my apartment. They've already sent death threats to my whole family, going back to even during the campaign before this guy decided to do what he did in Pittsburgh. Whether it was a false flag or not doesn't matter. Doing stuff like this guy has done in Pittsburgh, puts a giant target on my back. Because before, these Antifa types and these Jewish-controlled puppet organizations already had a target painted on my back. Every time I go out is a risk to my life. And now, these people that already felt justified in harming me or my family will feel they have carte blanche to do it, thinking that the public will side with them because I'll be associated with this guy in Pittsburgh. What I seek is peaceful revolution. My campaign site is littlerevolution.us. And never once have I called for violence. And violence will be done to me as a result of what this man has done in Pittsburgh. So Tony Marvey says, where can we see you on the ballot? So the place to see me was June 5th in California for Senate, and now in 2020 in every state in the union for the Democrat primary. So I'm going to look at some questions here. So Drew says this was a false flag. Do you have any evidence of that? Because right now, I cannot determine whether or not this was a false flag. Yeah, and Real Trophy Wife says, even if there was no peaceful solution, which there's no way of knowing that there isn't, even if I believed there was no peaceful solution, even then I wouldn't say that, because at that point, the mechanism of peacefully waking people up would be gone. So this is not an easy time for us now. We were already the victim. We're already targeted for genocide and ethnic cleansing in this country. And now these Jews, the elite, will use these people who have been sacrificed at the altar of advancing Jewish victimhood as cannon fodder in the political debates, in the mainstream media. They're going to vilify anyone who criticizes Jews as a murderer now. So, I'm going to read some questions here. So, Mr. Negantropy says, do you suggest voting Republican or Democrat in the primaries? And my theory is that Trump's going to win the Republican primary no matter what. And if you care about the JQ, or securing U.S. foreign policy to put America first, then register as a Democrat and vote for me in the primary. What I would like to do is expose the people running against Trump as being non-America firsters. Now, I would also like to pressure Trump into being America first by putting Israel last. So I think it's important to realize that you can't put America first so long as you allow the continued existence of the Israeli lobby. Let's talk about violence here for a moment outside of today's events. The Jewish oligarchy of Russia killed dozens of millions of people, and you didn't see anything about it in our Western news. Right now, ISIS is backed by Israel, and they're killing hundreds of thousands of innocent ethnic and religious minorities in the Middle East, including the Palestinians, the Assyrians, etc., etc. They are illegally occupying another country and attacking a sovereign nation, Syria. And they get away with this because they control the media. We are in the process of delegitimizing this Jewish media. And when we give them the bullets they need to morally win arguments, such as someone going out and doing unilateral action like this, all that does is hurt our ability to peacefully remedy the situation. The expulsion of the Jews from England under the Longshanks was peaceful. And they were able to keep them out for hundreds of years. They didn't round them up and do violence to them. They rounded them up and showed them the door. This is not good. With Gab being shut down now, the place for people who are J-woke to congregate out with a persistent account outside of 4chan is pretty much eliminated. And I don't think Gab's coming back. This is But the fact that such an event can be used to shut down free speech, to deplatform people, shows that our free speech is contingent upon everyone behaving. And free speech shouldn't be contingent upon current events. So this is only going to lead to more potential violence if they continue to shut down free speech. And the ADL is going to use this as carte blanche to shut down anyone critical of Jews. So they're going to lower the goalpost for anti-Semitic speech on Twitter. They're going to lower the goalpost for deplatforming hosting sites or sites that are hosted like Gab. And they'll get away with stuff like this. No one will speak up when there's 147% voter participation in some election. So let's talk some more about what happens to people when their political options and peaceful options are stripped of them, when they're stripped of their freedom of assembly or their right to peacefully gather and protest. I used to know a young man. He went by the name of, and I didn't know him in real life. I met him on a Zionist Jews blog back when I was an anti-jihadist, one of these people that was gaslit into being pro-Israeli and pro-Western, but anti all of the enemies of Israel. And this man went by the name of Anders Bering. Turns out his real name, I later discovered, was Anders Bering Breivik. He never talked about doing political violence when he used to blog, and I'd see his blog post on Pamela Geller's pages. However, this man, I listened to his things in court. He said that political discourse was impossible for anyone that didn't agree with the establishment's narrative. And he resorted to violence. Now, with this violence that this man in Pittsburgh has done, is give them, these Zionist Jews, these oligarchical Jews, these, not even all of them are Zionists, a lot of them are just anti-white Jewish supremacists, is given them the excuse they need to deplatform people who disagree with them, regardless of race and creed. Remember, they've taken away Louis Farrakhan's checkmark too, and they go after him constantly on Breitbart. And now there's less chance for peaceful discourse, which should not be the goal. If you think that sudden violence or civil disorder is going to lead to this Jewish oligarchy from being removed from power in this country or internationally, you're sorely mistaken. Because what happens when there's breakdown of civil order? Then there are emergency powers. And given the way Trump has behaved towards Israel when Israel's trying to take land from Syria, given the bombings of Syria that Trump has carried out, given the military aid that Trump has given to Israel and the terrorist forces that Israel supports, such as the Saudis, we are looking at a man that could not be trusted not to crack down on all of the political enemies of the Jewish oligarchy in the event of a civil disorder, in the event of unrest, in the event of the need for the declaration of states of emergencies in one or more states. Anyone who criticizes Jewish power in the event of civil disorder, probably under this Trump presidency and definitely under a Clinton presidency, will be rounded up. We are this close to the systems of oppression that the Jews had in place in the Soviet Union. I want you to remember, when the Jews had total control of the Soviet government from 1917 until the 1930s, they killed dozens of millions of people. Anyone who refused to recognize the state's dissolution of their marriage was killed. Any man who tried to block the Jews from raping their wives using the certificates that were handed out by the Bolshevik government was killed. Anyone who said openly that they were still Christian was killed. Anyone who criticized Jewish policies was killed. Anyone that pointed out the fact that 85% of the government of the USSR at the time was Jewish was killed. And if people cause a state of emergency in this country, in which case it's likely that our Bill of Rights would be suspended, look at who's in power now. It would be the same as in the Soviet Union, I posit. We would be rounded up, anyone that's critical of Jewish power, and their power would go unchecked. And right now, look at what's happening. It's amazing, the massive awakening that's happening. I've been going out trying to red pill people. I was in Southern California lately. I stopped at a gas station, and there was a Middle Easterner, a Chaldean. Chaldeans are one of the ethnic groups that have been suffering from oppression and genocide at the hands of Jewish-backed forces in the Middle East, such as ISIS, just like the Assyrians of Iraq. And I started trying to red pill him on the JQ, and he was already woke. There's an acquaintance I know from back in the day, and I called them up and I tried to red pill them on the JQ, and I started talking about how Jews control the news and social media. And they stopped me and said, Pat, I already know. So if you think that our efforts at peacefully waking people up so that there can be a peaceful transition of power in this country are in vain, then you're wrong. Because all it takes is an awakened populace. All it takes is enough people understanding the terrorist attacks that the Jewish state has carried out against this country, the false flags that have been committed by Israel, and the Jews and the media that helped cover these things up, or to scapegoat the enemies of the state of Israel as the perpetrators of these false flags. This information is spreading, and so long as we have even limited access to the internet, so long as a state of emergency is not declared, we can continue to wake people up, and I have full faith that these Jewish supremacists, these genocidal bastards, can be removed from power peacefully. I wouldn't be running for office if I didn't believe so. And even if I don't have a chance at winning, which I do believe that I do have a chance at winning, the platform that you get when you run is incredible. You can reach so many people. There are people that are sympathetic to those of us who speak about white genocide that I never would have dreamed would be sympathetic. I sat down with leaders of all sorts of non-white communities, and they said, we understand, yes, the Jewish-controlled news is anti-white. Yes, this state is a vassal state of Israel, and our military is a mercenary force for Israel given the way it's being handled. These people never would have normally come under the same tent as people that talk about the Jewish role in white genocide. We're achieving amazing things peacefully. And we can still build this coalition of the willing, but I can tell you one thing. It's going to be a lot harder to red pill normies to the JQ now that this thing has happened in Pittsburgh. And while I advocate the only plausible solution to the Jewish problem that has ever worked in the past, while I advocate for expulsion, I am still able to talk to multiple people, multiple groups, regardless of race, regardless of creed. And they can see the patterns reemerging of Jewish behavior in history that has caused these expulsions. And I'm even willing to talk to people that say there's an alternate solution to expulsion, but I've never seen another method work. It's important to note that Jews want there to be Jewish victims. Jews are often looking to sacrifice their own in the cause of portraying Jews as the eternal victim. And yes, the people that died at that synagogue today, most of them, if not all of them, were innocent people that have nothing to do with the opening of our borders, have nothing to do with the mainstream media being used as a weapon to weaponize non-whites against whites, to incite the peoples against each other. The only thing that has ever worked has been expulsion, and it's going to be that much harder to achieve that goal or a similar goal with what has happened now. Because now, and let me give you an example. So when Jews needed to be seen as victims, they sank their own transport boats. So there was a deal that was arrived at between the German government and the Zionists, where no country would accept the Jews from Germany. The Jews were looking to expel the Germans were looking to expel the Jews, as hundreds of countries had been forced to in the past to expel their Jews. And the Germans went to America, they went to Australia, they went to all the different members of the British Commonwealth, and they said, will you take these Jews? If you have a government that doesn't recognize the subversive influence of the Jews, will you then take these Jews as refugees or as just a transfer population? The Germans were even offering to let them leave with their wealth intact, which I would not allow the Jewish bankers in this country to do. I would not allow the Jews who receive the bailouts of these mega corporations, these mega banks, I would not allow them to leave with their wealth intact. They would have to hand that over to the U.S. taxpayer, and the remainder of the U.S. debt would be then assigned to Israel for repayment after it has been relocated to Madagascar. But I can get into that later. The point I'm making is that when the Jews realized that Germany was exercising a peaceful expulsion, they made sure that it couldn't be peaceful. They made sure that the Germans could not expel the Jews. They made sure that the Jews didn't have anywhere to go, the ones that had been scheduled for expulsion from Germany. And some of those Jews were allowed through the transfer agreement to go to Palestine, which I believe the Germans should have stuck to their original plan of sending them to Madagascar, as the Palestinian population is now suffering a genocide at the hands of these Jews. The Jews sunk their own transport boats so that they could say that the Jews en route from Germany to Palestine were victims. They needed victims, so they created them, and the Jews sacrificed many of their own. We can talk about false flag attacks that have been done since the inception of the terrorist state of Israel, that have been done by Jews against Jews to create Jewish victims. We can talk about how the Jews who controlled the Royal Air Force and who had heavy influence over the American Air Force made sure that the civilian infrastructure that had to do with the distribution of food in the German in the German state during World War II, they made sure that the camps couldn't get the food that they needed, couldn't get the medicine that they needed by bombing all of the German rails. The Jews needed Jewish victims. This Jewish international oligarchy, this international clique, needed the public to see Jews as the ultimate victims to get away with the war crimes they had planned for the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. They needed pictures of dead Jews. They needed this stuff for propaganda purposes so that they could put Jews above reproach culturally, as they had done legally or through law in the Soviet Union. They did it this time culturally. So they created hundreds of thousands. It's estimated that a few 100,000 Jews died as a result of starvation and typhus in the internment camps. And the same thing would have happened in the United States if the Axis had bombed the U.S. highway system and the train stations and everything, so such that the point that the food from the breadbaskets of America couldn't make it to the different internment camps. The hundreds of thousands or millions of Germans and Italians and Japanese that were in internment camps during the Second World War would have also died of diseases that result from malnutrition if the opponents in that war had bombed the U.S. civilian infrastructure for food delivery and transport. So it's important to know that when you don't make Jews into victims, they will make themselves into victims. And what this man has done in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is eliminate the need for the Jews to carry out their own false flag attacks, which I predicted were coming. And if this isn't a false flag attack, and this was actually a guy that just lost it and couldn't take Jewish supremacism anymore, then he has done their work for them. And with that, I say good night. I invite you to look at my prior videos where I said that the Jews needed some sort of a terrorist attack in order to make themselves above reproach. They needed some new piece of propaganda to place themselves above reproach, and with this, false flag or not, they have it. And we're going to have to figure out a way to continue to criticize Jewish power and overcome this new trump card they have of this shooting that has happened in Pittsburgh. Reminding you to be peaceful in your journey to liberate your people from the Jewish oligarchy if you live in a foreign country, and reminding you, if you're an American, to always seek through peaceful means the liberation of this country from the Jews. This is Patrick Little signing off. Remember to vote for me in 2020 in the Democratic primary. Have a good night.